Welcome everyone to our Luminary Panel. We're happy to have several luminaries start the year off with their insights. We're joined today by Peter Coffey, VP for Strategic Research at Salesforce, Jeetu Patel, Executive Vice President and General Manager, Security and Collaboration at Cisco, and Tracy Ring, Chief Data Officer and Global Generative AI Lead, Life Sciences at Accenture. Thank you everyone for joining us. We'll start with a round of introductions.
Hello, I'm Tracy Ring. I'm Accenture's Chief Data Officer and Global Head of Generative AI for the life sciences industry.
Jeetu Patel. I'm the Executive Vice President and General Manager for the Security and Collaboration businesses at Cisco. Been here for about 3.5 years, close to 4 in July. And, basically the charter is to build amazing products that people love, that they talk to their friends and family about, whether it be to enable them to get work done more effectively or to keep them secure.
Hi, I'm Peter Coffey. I'm Vice President for Strategic Research at Salesforce. Just coming up on my 17th anniversary with the company. It was 2,000 people when I joined. It's a little bit larger now. And every couple of years, we find that the scope of what people want from us in particular, from their systems in general, grows. And I always look forward to the chance to be with you folks at Corum every year for the top 10 trends to see what that means for us, for our customers and partners, and for your larger served community.
Let's get straight into it. You've had a chance to look over what we think will be trending in the coming year. So, what are the key trends you are seeing that tech company CEOs should be considering in the year ahead? Let's start with you, Peter.
Technology should not be about the thing that's made. It should be about the need that's met. And what really frustrates people today, I think, in their roles as workers and as consumers, is that they feel they need to know the magic words and the pathways through the mazes of menus that they need to get things done. And the way that software has been built for decades is to take a process that's already pretty well defined and write code that does that process, and then wrap that code in buttons that people can click or menus from which they can pick. And for decades, we've had other ways to write software that are quite different, where you describe the nouns and the verbs of the space where the problem needs to be solved. You state a goal, and the machine shows you how to achieve it instead of you needing to know where to poke the machine. And right now, this is seen in a very minimal way in software help systems, for example, where you can say, I don't know what menu this is in, I want to do this, and it points, it says, oh, you need to go do this, this, and this. That's a solution to a problem that shouldn't exist. What we really want is to have the new technologies of things like the vector database and other tools for semantic search, so that you will see a really important trend of people being able to rely on a machine to assist them instead of just passively waiting for them to tell it what to do. So if the trend needs to be encapsulated in a name, the trend is going to be active assistance rather than passive performance from the systems that we rely on to help us get things done.
Thanks, Peter. What about you, Jeetu?
Well, this is the last year, I say, that we will probably do annual trends like the one that we're doing right now, because I think the clock speed and the cycle time is going to get compressed so much that people are going to predict every 6 months rather than predicting every 12. And you're just going to see shorter cycle times because the rate of change and the velocity of innovation is going to compound at a very, very exponential rate. A few trends that might make a lot of sense that to keep in mind that are beyond the obvious. I mean, of course, the obvious ones are, generative AI is going to take on more. There's going to be not just language, but it's going to be around multimodal. So you'll have images and text and video play a much more prominent role in generative AI. All of those things are going to be pretty common. There's going to be small language models, not just large language models. Those are all the pretty obvious ones that you can think about for AI. And AI is going to be one of the big areas where I think there's only two kinds of companies in the world. There's companies that are AI forward, and then there'll be companies that are irrelevant. But I don't think there's going to be companies that don't care about AI, but are relevant companies in the future. And whether that happens in 24 or not, I'm not really quite sure of, but that is the longer term kind of outlook that I see. And I think in these kind of major platform shifts that you see occurring, people always overestimate the impact in the short term and grossly underestimate the impact in the long term. So we've got to keep that in mind. But big trends that are more counterintuitive in nature, I'd say I think AI is going to get much better at unlearning, not just learning. Right now, there's been a huge amount of focus on how do you train a model so that it knows all these things. But I think it's going to be just as important for us to make sure that there's bad habits learned, you can unlearn those habits. So we'll need to make some progress on that, but that'll be an area. I think AI will get far more personal and bespoke. The models will get much more bespoke than what they have been in the past. And those will, and that'll be a pretty big, trend. And the third big one I'd say is around cybersecurity, where it's a two-pronged thing where one, it's probably the first time in my professional career, at least, that I've been ecstatic about something and terrified about that same thing at the same time. The reason I'm ecstatic is because I think for the first time, you can see a pathway where the scales start to tip in the favor of the defender versus in the favor of the adversary in the world of cybersecurity. And that's historically never been the case. In the past, it's always been that the attacker, the adversary, the bad folks always have an advantage because they have to be right once, whereas a defender has to be right every single time. While that's still the case, what you'll see is there'll be an advantage towards the favor of the defender because they'll have a data advantage. They'll have more that they can predict and prevent an attack before it happens. So I think from a cybersecurity standpoint, the exciting part is we'll be able to use AI to get all of us more safe. The downside of it is that AI is also going to be used by those same adversaries to get themselves more sophisticated, but it'll be harder for us to distinguish between legitimate activity and a malicious attack. And so that's going to be an area that we need to really think long and hard on and effectively detecting and predicting adversaries' actions before they in fact happen. So those are coming two or three of the big trends. And the other one I'd say is hybrid work is going to continue to be real, but how people operate with everyone having an assistant is that you'll have a lot of kind of productivity assistance provided to people, where everyone will have some kind of a sidekick or an assistant or a co-pilot that can help them get the work done. So no one starts with a blank sheet of paper because you always have someone as an assistant to help you get started.
Thanks, G2. Tracy?
So tech on the broader perspective here, I think of digital core as one of the most important things that I consider as a total enterprise reinvention lever. So that means everything from having a resilient core, and we saw that demonstrated by the organizations that were able to be the most agile during COVID, but having cloud architecture, having a resilient data architecture, and most importantly, for me, it's looking at how they're both advancing and scaling their investments in generative AI, as that's really one of the most important topics of the year.
Moving on to the next question. Of the top 10 trends that Corum has identified, are there any in particular that you are excited about and why? We'll start with Tracy this time.
Yeah, so I think there was a couple trends that are most important to me. So obviously generative AI. I always say that I get to be our chief data officer, but in this year I've had hundreds upon hundreds of conversations that start with generative AI. We ultimately talk about data and the importance of data as it relates to the broader Gen AI journey. But generative AI is an enormous transformative lever that I'm seeing every type of organization leveraging, but particularly in life sciences, the way that it's reinventing, every role, whether it's a role in R&D and science or transforming the way that we think about the commercialization and launch of new drugs. The other one I think is extremely compelling is the patient centricity and the importance of not only putting the patient at the center of everything that we do, but I think it really anchors into how we're thinking about the broader ecosystem around the patient. So both of those were extraordinarily important. And then the last one that I think about is really about the talent angle and how organizations are using both of those technological levers and the broader transformation to upskill, grow their talent, retain their talent, and use that as a real strategic differentiator against our competitors.
Great. Thanks, Tracy. Peter?
It would be hard to overstate how much this has been a year in which the topic was generative AI, but in the manner of exponential acceleration, and I'm trying to use that word quite precisely, it's clear that we are rapidly moving into already a second wave of generative AI, in which large language models, and using the term in the technical sense, large language models, are going to be curated from focused and trusted data sets that are aimed at a task-specific need. And so we're going to be having smaller large language models. The issues of the models that are fed on general purpose and public data include things like intellectual property rights and leakage of training data and runaway loops into bias and toxicity. And these models are expensive to produce and operate and maintain. So Corum's number one trend of Gen AI enablement should be clearly understood to mean curation rather than consumption. And it means that the number 5 trend, everything ups, needs to be recognized as including ongoing maintenance and governance of AI models if their value is going to be longer lasting than just a pilot project.
Thank you, Peter. And G2?
AI is not a new concept. It's been around for a while. But what really changed in 23, or in fact, in November of 22, was when ChatGPT came out and you started seeing this massive level of, appetite for people wanting to go out and use AI. It became real for people. And there was a huge amount of progress made towards a machine's understanding of language. And I think that is the huge unlock that's happened, where now every company in the world is going to be thinking about ways to use AI to get more productive, to get more innovative, to get more secure, to get more expedient in the way in which they can serve their customers. All of those things will happen as a result of AI, and that's something that I think is a very obvious trend to get excited about. The one that I think is tied to that is this whole notion of people-centric productivity, where AI will assist people, there's a human-in-the-loop kind of scenarios. I think there's 2 scenarios where AI will take on, right? One is where it eliminates humans because it takes over the job. And the second one is where it actually enhances a human's ability to do a job. The second one is far more exciting than the first. And that's an area that at least we are spending a fair amount of our time, is how do you have a human in the loop, but enhance every person's experience with the job that they're doing so that they can do it in a much richer way and give them more data, more context, more assistance. And so that's going to be an area that I personally feel pretty excited about too.
What's the number one reason you get excited about a company as an M&A target or strategic partner? Let's go to G2 first.
Well, so the way that we at Cisco think about M&A targets, and we are, we aren't shy to acquire when it makes sense. But, the way that we think about this is, number one, you have to have a strategic fit in what that company does and what you're trying to do, and there being some level of synergy over there. Number two, there has to be a cultural fit in the fact that the people that you're bringing over in an acquisition have to fit into the culture and expand your culture all at the same time, but they have to share a common set of values. In the absence of two, one doesn't really matter. if you don't have good cultural fit, no matter how great the strategic fit is, the acquisition would not be successful. A lot of acquisitions fail because the second part is not really well thought through. And then the third thing is it has to be coming at a reasonable price, and so those are the things that we typically keep in mind. And, the way that we think about acquisitions is it should augment our effort. We have a very clear true north of where we're going. If something augments our effort to get there faster, that's a great acquisition to have. But the thing that we want to be really, really obsessed about is building great products that people love, that they can talk to their friends and family about.
Thanks, Jitu. Tracy?
For me, M&A targets are, I strategically anchor on, is what they're providing something that is truly novel and unique and differentiated in the market? Bringing something that is truly innovative and can disrupt are things that are extremely important. Ancillarily to that, I really think about, how have they developed their ecosystem business and who have they collaborated with? And what is their diversity of thought around not only is their solution novel for now, but how are they thinking about continuously disrupting themselves? We challenge ourselves to, think about, change as a constant. And I think organizations that have a mindset of continuous reinvention is something that really is a sustainable and longitudinal value for an acquisition.
That's great. Thanks, Tracy. Now to you, Peter.
The relationship with a strategic partner, like so many other things, is being remade by the presence of generative AI in our lives, because what that generative AI infusion does is reduce, relatively speaking, the value of knowing the answers to questions, because the answer to any question you can state is going to become very easily obtained. The greater value now will be the insight to ask a question that redefines a problem or that opens a pathway to new kinds of value. So the attractive partner is going to be less characterized by the old kind of intellectual property of what do they know? It's going to be more characterized by their creative and disciplined capacity to know what questions customers most need answered, especially when the customer doesn't already know that those questions even have answers. And that is the expertise with greatest value in an epoch of AI that is really quite clearly already underway.
Great insights, everyone. Thanks again for being on with us today. We're looking forward to working with you in the new year.